continue our conversation. My name is Ifani Awa. This program is brought to you by the Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action Prawa. And on this morning's edition of the program, I have with me Honest Ofo. He's the senior programs. He's senior programs. Sorry, Honest Ofo. Can you please help me out? The senior programs what again? Officer rather. The senior programs officer at Prawa. Honest, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ifan. It's my pleasure to join you this morning.
All right. Now, Honest is on this program because he has been to the conventions, a couple of the conventions. He's seen firsthand what these papers hold. What are the details of this? What is the details of these papers are, and what our duty as a nation? What the duty of the government is in terms of making sure that we adhere to everything stipulated in this treaty, which Nigeria is a signatory to. Now, don't forget again, you can go straight to our Facebook page, Flow 94.9 FM, Umaya, and watch us live. This program is going to be interactive. So as we go on, we're going to open the phone line so you can also call in to ask questions. So, Honest, good morning to you yet again.
Good morning.
Let us go from this. Last week, we looked at the treaty which Nigeria is a signatory to. And we looked at the fact that Nigeria hasn't submitted, its report in years now. But let us come from exactly what are the details of this particular treaty.
Okay, thank you very much. I would start by saying that the Convention Against Torture is a treaty of the United Nations where countries called state parties sign up to the treaty to say, okay, we are coming together in our country, we are going to take actions that will prohibit the acts of torture. And this is very important. Mm-hmm. And I also want to note that the Convention Against Torture is not the only international instrument that prohibits torture. For instance, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 5 of 1948 also prohibits torture. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 7, also prohibits torture. The Convention on the Rights of the Child of 1989 also prohibits torture. And in 1998, the Rome Statute, which designates what you call the acts of war or crimes of war, also designated torture as a war crime. So you can see that the world has taken very concerted actions to see that torture is prohibited. Now, coming to the Convention Against Torture, which Nigeria signed up in June of 2001 as a signatory, the Nigerian state is required by the treaty to do a couple of things. One of them is to have laws or a law that criminalizes torture. State parties are supposed to take actions or to legislative actions that will criminalize torture, and Nigeria has done that by passing the Anti-Torture Act of 2017.
Okay.
Also, there is another protocol of the United Nations which is very closely related to the Convention Against Torture, and that is called the Optional Protocol to the Convention Against Torture.
Okay.
Now, you understand that most times when you have policies and things like that, you must have strategies that will help you implement it. So the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture came on board to operationalize the Convention Against Torture. And the optional protocol is like a preventive mechanism. Now, when we talk about torture and people using torture, we are talking about probably persons in places of detention that are being tortured to extract confessional statements from them, or maybe torturing people in order for them to admit what they did not do, or in order to punish them for what they did, or in order to drive fear into them. So the optional protocol is a preventive mechanism that is coming to say, okay, how do we even prevent torture from happening? Okay. So you realize that most often than not, torture actually takes place in places of detention. When you are detained, you are already in a vulnerable position. You are not there where you are outside the prying eyes of the public. Nobody is seeing what is happening behind closed doors, behind the high walls of whether it is the correctional facility or whether it is the police stations or any other place where persons are detained. Now, what the optional protocol tries to do is to say, can we have unfettered access to places of detention? Can we have a body that is independent that can visit any place of detention whenever they want to visit without any form of inhibition. And that is what the optional protocol tries to do. So I also want to highlight, because you asked what the convention tries to say.
Yes.
Probably the very first place to start is to start with Article 1 that defines what torture is. Because the truth remains that a lot of Nigerians don't even know what torture is. A lot of Nigerians do not understand that even when they are being tortured, they don't know. So people believe it is routine or probably an operational procedure, that when you are probably in a police station or whether you are being detained for doing something, that you can actually be beaten, you can actually be threatened, you can actually be punished in order during interrogation. So it's important for us to really define torture so that persons who are listening to us will understand what torture means, and also know when they are being tortured and what their rights are, because it's very important.
All right, honest. Sorry, honest. Before you continue, now first of all, just we're jumping into the issue of torture. Like, what is torture? And I remember that during a workshop we had, I think that was the end of last year, where we're talking about torture, and a couple of things came up on what torture was, and even being understanding what torture has been for a while, I was surprised at the other elements that we could define as torture. So, what other angle don't people know when it comes to torture?
Okay, now the other angle people don't know is that torture is not only physical. Torture can also be mental and psychological, and that is actually very, very severe, even more severe than physical torture, because mental torture, of course, also leaves you with trauma. Physical torture also can also lead you to trauma, but mental torture leads you to trauma. So a lot of persons don't even understand when they are going through a lot of mental torture, a lot of psychological torture, because they want to extract maybe confessional statements from you. So I said I was going to define torture earlier. Torture means an act where severe pain or suffering, and it's important to note that this severe pain or suffering can be physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for the purposes as obtaining from him or a third party information or confession, or punishing him or her for an act the person has committed or is suspected of having committed. Importantly also, intimidating or coercing him, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such a pain or suffering is inflicted by or at the instigation of or with the consent of a public official. So it's important to also note that in the definition of torture going by the convention, it has to do with a public person, a public official. So that is why we keep talking about security actors, state security actors, because they are public officials who are acting on behalf of the state.
Sorry. Based on what you just said, let's just clear this part first. Based on what you just said, based on the definition in the convention, yes, are you saying that torture can only be carried out by a state official?
Exactly.
So if it's an ordinary citizen tends to torture someone, it won't be regarded as torture. Is that what you're saying?
It won't. It really can't be defined as torture. But, and this is also important, but the state has an obligation to protect the rights of citizens. So if you remember when I was defining this, also parts of torture is that when a state acquiesces or abandons its responsibility of protecting the rights of citizens, when citizens are being tortured, the state can be held accountable for not doing enough.
Okay.
And that is why we are also complaining that in terms of issues like terrorism, or in terms of issues like banditry and things like that are being visited on citizens, and when government is not doing enough and people are being tortured, it's the responsibility of government to protect and defend the rights of citizens, and when this is not done, government can be held accountable.
All right.
But just also to say that our law, beyond just the Anti-Torture Act, our laws also have made provisions for issues regarding things like punishment, or people who punish others, or people who do things. But you have things like the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act that deals with things like non-state security actors, and it's very, very important to know that. But going by the convention, torture is really defined when it is being perpetuated by a public official.
Now, I'm very interested in this part, because a lot of persons are going to be confused, because we are used to saying, you know what, this special person tortured this person. The most usual example you find in society is saying, a house help who is tortured by her maybe someone who's her guardian. It's a very
Yes.
easy example to give. And I
Yes.
remember sometime
Exactly.
last year we had lots of cases where lots of kids were chained in different schools in the northern part of the country, and it was regarded as torture. Now,
Yes.
based on what you're saying right now, these persons are not state actors. They are not
Yes.
state officials.
Yes.
How would they be charged? Or
Well,
who will be held responsible?
the persons can, like I mentioned earlier, you have other legislations that takes care of issues like this, like the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, that of course prohibits you visiting bodily harm on a fellow citizen. It's clearly prohibited. So, but in terms of torture, for you to actually, even when you go by the Anti-Torture Act of 2017, it also clearly states that, I mean, torture really can be perpetrated by state officials, public officials, state security actors, or persons in positions of authority. Because, of course, they are holding power in trust for the people. So when they abuse their powers and use it to torture and to visit cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment on citizens, then it can be defined as torture. But the issues when you talk about maybe punishing persons, like the issue you mentioned about house helps being punished by persons who brought them in, that can be treated as violence against the person, and that will be tried under the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And I think the Abia State government have also domesticated that particular act. So it's in force in Abia State. So when that happens, that provision is there. But when you have issues having the police officers, whether it is Civil Defense, Department of State Security, Army officers, whether it is the military, or whether it is the Navy and things like that, whether it's even the vigilantes, because those ones too, talking about neighborhood watch, or those other security outfits set up by the legislation of the state, the state houses of assembly, they are acting on behalf of the state. So you can also say that now they are somehow, you can also list them as state security actors as well. So when those people actually torture people, and of course there are different ways people are being tortured. You arrest somebody, I will give you examples. Now someone is arrested and then you want the person to confess. What did you do? What did you say? The law, even going by the ACJE, says that the person needs to be, if you are interrogating the person needs to have his lawyer there, or any person of his choice, before you can interrogate the person. But what you have in effect is that people are arrested and they are being tortured. They are being tortured in order to make them confess whether they committed the offenses or not. Apart from that, you see all sorts of things. People are tortured with cigarette lights. You press the light on you light up a cigarette and use it to burn them. People are being flogged. People are being chained like animals. People are taken out of where they can't even see daylight and thrown into underground cells, so that you can actually torture them mentally. There are people who are baited with water. You soak a towel in water, then you place it over the person's head, and you are pouring water on the person. It's called water baiting or something like that, in order to make the person to confess.
All right.
All of these are acts of torture. And it's important to state this, that torture is a non-derogable right. So what it means is that torture cannot be justified under any circumstance, even during war.
Okay.
Even during war,
Now,
you can't justify acts of torture.
Okay, now, for those if you're just tuning in, this is Victims' Voices. It is brought to you by the Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, PRAWA. And I was speaking with Honest Ofor, who is the Senior Programs Officer at PRAWA. We're looking at the convention, the details of the convention, what torture really is, as defined by the treaty which Nigeria is a signatory to. And Honest has been very honest with us in definition of what this is. Now, phone lines are open in case you love to ask questions, or maybe you love to clear certain things, or maybe you've gone through an incident that you love to make known, so we can help talk about it also and know how to refer it. 0808 182 6949 or 0811 605 2949. These are the phone lines. 0808 182 6949 or 0811 605 2949. Now, I think you know what? I think I'm going to take a call before I go to my next question. Right? Okay, I lost that one. Keep them coming in. Just keep trying. Now, Honest,
Yeah.
Something was said about that if a senior officer, maybe in the police or in the army, mandates or asks a junior officer to torture someone to get information, that it is not an excuse. But before you answer that, let me see if this goes through. I think if I was having issue with line 0808 182 6949 or 0811 605 2949. Honest, what I was saying is during the workshop we had, someone said something that a junior officer torturing someone who's been arrested,
yes,
based on the order of a senior officer, that even
yes,
though it was an order, the junior officer cannot be exempted from whatever punishment. Would
exactly.
you care to explain that?
Yes, what it means is that if you are aware someone is being tortured as a senior officer, okay, let me start from saying this also, that if you're a junior officer and a senior officer asks you to torture someone, that is not, you are not under any form of cover. When you are arrested, you will be tried, and the express order that was given to you by your superior will not be like a cover. It won't save you from what is coming. So what it means is that nobody can order another person to actually commit an act of torture. Also, at the same time too, if you are there and you look the other way when someone is being tortured without saying anything, you are also in breach of the law. You are also in breach of the law. So what it's called acquiescence in law. So once you are where someone is being tortured as an officer and you do nothing, you are also liable. You are also liable. If you check Section 8 of our Anti-Torture Act of 2017, I would like to read it. It says a person who actually participates in the infliction of torture or who is present during the commission of the act of torture is liable as the principal. So what it means is that if you are present when an act of torture is being committed, you are as liable as the person who is actually committing the offense.
Does this only does this only affect security officers, or does it go around?
Remember what I told you, it has to do with public officials.
Okay.
Public officials, yes. Public officials. So what it also means that if you are a politician, or if you're a big organ, or you occupy a place, a public office, and then you order, and of course this is actually very, very common. This is very common in Nigeria. You see a big man who has a police or a security official who is attached to him, and the person will order his security details to torture another citizen because of the position they occupy. The person, that big man, is liable. The big man may not be the one who inflicted that torture on someone else, but according to Section 8 of the Anti-Torture Act of 2017, that big man is liable. I was also going to mention that the same Section 8 subsection 2 says that a superior military, police, or law enforcement, and you can note the wordings of the law, a superior military, police, or law enforcement officer or senior government official who issues an order to have a lower ranking personnel to torture a victim for whatever purpose is equally liable as the principal. So this is very important. So this is very, very important because you have a situation where the so-called big men who occupy positions of influence use their positions to deal with maybe their political opponents or persons who are not loyal to them or persons who they feel maybe insulted them in one way or the other. They send their security details to torture them. It's an act of torture. And to also tell you that in our laws, the law in terms of punishment for acts of torture, our laws says that the person, if convicted, is liable. I mean, the maximum punishment is 25 years imprisonment. So it's very, very important for people to understand that this is is a very serious issue.
Now, I'll have to take some calls because the phone lines have been going crazy. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. My name is Enoch.
Enoch, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. If the treaty to which Nigeria is a signatory is against torture, even to those who actually committed crimes, and are detained, what is the best measure to elicit information from criminals since they cannot tell truth having committed crimes?
All right. So you're asking, since torture isn't allowed when it comes to getting information, what else can be done? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. What
All right.
is that? The method to elicit information.
And now,
If they cannot tell you the truth, yeah.
all right, thank you very much. Now, honest, I don't know if you heard that. The person is asking, Enoch is asking, since torture isn't allowed when getting information from a suspect, what else can be done?
Thank you very much. And we get these questions all of the time. And I must also say that any statement or confessional statement that is obtained under torture is not admissible in courts. Any statement you obtain through torture is not admissible in court. So you have situations where persons are said to have confessed to committing offenses and the matter gets to court, and then the accused now says, no, the statement I made was made under duress. I was tortured for me to make this statement, and the matter will stop there because now the court will now want to determine whether the torture actually took place. You will now have what we call trial within trial, and that case will be stalled. So the issue is our security agencies can no longer only base their evidence only on confessional statements.
Okay.
There are other ways you can obtain statements or obtain evidence beyond just confessional statement, because confessional statement sometimes is my word against yours. So there are empirical evidence that you can gather. Okay. Unfortunately, also, and I sympathize with our security agencies, we may not have the requisite tools to be able to do scientific investigations and things like that. I know that in terms of having forensic equipment to carry out investigation, we don't have a lot of it here in Nigeria. I think I only know of the one that is existing only in Lagos. So you have situations where others are left to actually carry out investigation by other means apart from forensic evidence.
All right.
So there are other ways they can carry out investigation beyond just using torture.
Okay,
there
honest,
are other ways they can carry out investigation. Yes.
I know you have so much to say, but we are almost out of time. But I'll just take in one more call so we just hear from someone else. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Wa.
Good morning to you. Name and location, please.
Good morning, I'm Lego Luminary in the studio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, go on.
I name Mr. Prince Williswago for here, no more go.
All right, Prince, go on, please. We have just a few seconds left.
Mr. Wa, my question goes like this. During an election, any type of election in Nigeria, if there has been a very solid support and solid cogent reasons that a particular party has hijacked the personnel during the election as well as the materials, is it part and parcel of torture in Nigerian law?
All right, thank you. All right, Honest is asking during election where maybe what you call it, staff of the INEC hijacked with their the electoral with the boxes, would that be regarded as torture?
It depends on who hijacked them and what happened after they were hijacked.
All
if,
right.
for instance, state security officers abduct INEC officials during their official duties and then torture them to be able to change or write results, of course, that can be said to be torture.
All right. Honest, thank you very much for speaking with me this morning. I wish we had more time to talk about. I know that there's still so much to talk about, but we have next week, Monday. We're back again. 9:30. Victims' Voices brought to you by the Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action Power. And I've been speaking with Honest for the Senior Programs Officer at the Power. Honest, thank you very much for coming out, for speaking with me this morning.
Thank you very much, Ifeanyi. My pleasure.
All right. This is when we'll continue. We'll come back 9:30 next week, Monday. It's been nice having you. Do stay tuned. Coming up at 10, it's Inside IBN. After that will be the platform with Michael Oni. Do have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead.